George Santos could have avoided being the first member of Congress expelled without being convicted of a crime, but he refused to quit.
Why not just resign?
Because if I leave, they win. If I leave, the bullies take place. This is bullying. It's all theater. It's theater for the cameras. It's theater for the microphones.
The House voting Friday to boot the fabricating Long Island congressman who said he didn't have to answer reporters' questions anymore by more than the required two-thirds margin, 331 to 114.
They broke precedent. I mean, he's the reason here. You know, he was so awful. He was a parody of a corrupt congressman.
Joining us now, Griff Jenkins, the Fox News anchor and correspondent. And Griff, the media was so transfixed by this lying and fabricating House member because his tales were so ludicrous. And yet, as the House Ethics Report made clear, these were very serious accusations of illegality.
To hell with this place, Howie. That was his last words. Look, Washington is going to miss George Santos and his Ferragamo loafers, which, by the way, were not paid for by the campaign funds because, as he told us in that disastrous train wreck press conference, that they're 6 years old. If you just go to the website and check for yourself.
But what about the payments for Botox and OnlyFans and designer clothing?
In there lies the irony, in that there are no background checks on members of Congress. And there was such a Walter Mitty fantasy litany biography of this guy that it's up to voters and the media to do checks on this guy. And now he does face, we should point out on a serious note, a 23-count criminal indictment.
And could wind up in prison. About half the Republicans turned on Santos. The leadership did not, joining Democrats in that vote to expel. But right through the press conference the day before that Santos held, he really seemed to revel in media attention.
He loves it, but he also loves the fantasy that he's created. He was telling voters he was Jewish and Catholic at the same time. He was a seasoned Wall Street investor, yet Citibank or Goldman Sachs
said never heard of him.
Never heard of him. The colleges he said he graduated from, never heard of him. And the worst of it, he says he saved thousands of dogs and cats with the pet charity that the IRS says doesn't exist. But
you've been a big fan of his. You got all the details.
Well, at the same time, he's a fascinating story because he was able to continue to just defy the scrutiny, and I would argue maybe he had on his side the fear of such a slim Republican majority that they were willing to go along to keep it.
Well, let's get to this because Santos posted a bunch of nasty remarks about Republicans who had voted against him and said he'd file ethics complaints against them. Of course, he's just a private citizen now. For example, Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, he writes, Nicole Mallio's stock tips is a dirty, dishonorable swamp creature selling the American people down a river. Her office said they're not going to comment because he's a serial liar. Not exactly graciously bowing out.
No, he's on a revenge tour, and he also went after other Republican members of New York's congressional delegation, Mike Lawler, Nick LaLota, and then he threw in Bob Menendez for good measure, who was in all kinds of problems with Egyptian gold bars. But the point is that he's done. He's gone. Now, this seat that's going to be fought over, and Governor Hochul will appoint somebody, but you're going to have a special election here very soon. Will there be the kind of scrutiny on that seat and other members of Congress as we go into an election year for a guy like this?
Speaking of media scrutiny, and you alluded to this earlier, the New York Times broke the story about how George Santos hadn't graduated from these colleges, didn't play on the volleyball team, didn't work for the big Wall Street firms, wasn't Jewish, as you note. But that came after the guy was elected. And so didn't the media, especially the New York media, really botch the coverage of this race? It would have taken 2 phone calls to realize that a lot of this was made up.
Absolutely. And look, even after he got here, you just show up on Capitol Hill with a baby strapped to your chest walking around that nobody knows who it is. Nobody knows where the baby is now. Like, it's the most bizarre behavior. And from the campaign trail to the baby episode, I call it, the media didn't do what they should have done on going into who this guy was. And as the New York Times did do a piece, that they followed up, but belatedly, you've learned that this was pretty easy discoverable stuff, even for internet sleuths.
Absolutely. 5 minutes. There was one local Long Island paper that published some of this. Nobody picked it up because the race wasn't really being covered. A lot of congressional races. His staff found out, urged him to drop out, but he refused. So again, it's a classic case of the things that the voters in that Long Island district should have known before, but the media had other priorities, and they didn't find out until it was too late.
No, but people will be fascinated in what happens next with him. I mean, look, we haven't had this kind of episode since the Salahis crashed a White House dinner.
I remember that.
Course, that we continue to follow the Salahis, and she married a member of the band Journey. What happens next with this guy? Could he ever come back to Congress? We'll see. He seems to be on this revenge tour, and he says, as I said in the beginning, to hell with this place, but I think we haven't seen the last of George Santos.
Well, there's all this lighthearted coverage. Will he get a reality show? I mean, the real problem is he may be in prison. We don't know how long, if he is convicted. But I think you're already missing him because he definitely provided plenty of fodder. We got to go. Griff Jenkins, thanks so much. Still to come, Donald Trump accuses MSNBC of illegal political activity. Most of the media ignore it. And Elon Musk tells advertisers to buzz off.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.